Kia ora Star Wars fans, welcome to Middle Aged Kiwi Man collecting Star Wars figures. Now in this video, we're going to go through my top 25 submission for March Madness. Now if you don't know what March Madness is, it's something that the SWTVC guys do every year. They're based on Instagram, so massive shout out to John, Evan, Tyler and Lewis for doing this every year. But basically you submit a list of your top 25 figures that you would like to see in the vintage collection. They're all ranked, so more points for the one you rank 1 versus what you rank 25. They compile all the submissions and then they run this awesome March Madness bracket in March with the top 64. So I think last time they got something like 1,200 entries. It's been increasing every year. This is the 5th year. So yeah, it's just a really fun exercise. Now before we get into my list, I also want to say a massive thank you. I've crossed over 2,000 subscribers recently, so a massive thank you to everyone who's subscribed, watches, likes, all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate all of you. But with that being said, let's get into my list. Oh, and just before we do, this is a fun list. This whole thing is so much fun. I've seen so many lists. I've never seen a list I don't like. There's no wrong answers, so I'm going to put all the details in the description below, but I highly encourage you to put in your list as well. Alright, and just in case you're interested in the process or the method behind the madness, if you like, of my top 25 this year, first thing I did was I actually went back and looked at my top 25 from last year, and really happy to say that heaps of the figures that were on my top 25 list from last year have either been made in production or have been pipelined. So things like the Snowtrooper, I was super excited when that was announced, and a whole bunch of the New Hope mains. So we've got Luke Skywalker, some people have it in hand already, Han Solo, Ben Kenobi, things like that. So, oh, and Shin Hati and Baylan Skoll as well from the Ahsoka series have also been pipelined. So some really awesome stuff happening, which is fantastic, which meant I sort of had to go back previous lists, see what I had there, see if I wanted to put them in again, and then basically fill some gaps. So I'll take you through what I did. Alright, and this is why Baze Malbus is my number one. So this is Baze Malbus from the Rogue One line. It's 5 POA. I'm pretty sure it came in a 2-pack as well, with a Stormtrooper or something like that. There's his best buddy, Chirrut, which we got a few years ago now. And when this one came out in Vintage Collection, I thought, oh, this is awesome. We're getting his buddy Baze soon, but we haven't got his buddy Baze. And Rogue One's now coming up 9 years ago. And I think that Chirrut figure is like 3 or 4 years old. So, yeah, come on. Really want a Baze Malbus. I know other people in the community too. But anyway, that's my number one. And remember, your number one could be completely different. That's entirely up to you. I'm not trying to influence you. I make no apologies for being a fan of the sequel trilogy. Look at that. So there's all these cool looking Sith troopers, but no one to lead them. So I've got a 5 POA Kylo Ren as a stand-in, but Supreme Leader Kylo Ren was made in absolutely every single other Hasbro line. It was made in Hot Toys, it was made in Funko Pop, it was made in 6-inch Black Series, even in the kitty kind of line. I forget what that was called, but it wasn't done in Vintage Collection. It needs to be done, and we need his boss, of course. Somehow Palpatine return. Sith Eternal Emperor Palpatine. 4, 5 and 6, I've got some of the main characters from Phantom Menace. I've got Obi-Wan Kenobi there, I've got Qui-Gon. We do need a new Darth Maul as well, I believe. Got plenty of Jedi from that era. And I've also put in there Anakin Skywalker from the Phantom Menace. So I've been really well served in the Vintage Collection by a number of Darth Vaders and some really cool Anakin Skywalkers coming. But I really want this Anakin Skywalker now, the one from Tatooine where we first meet him. Long overdue in the Vintage Collection. This is the outfit that he's in for the majority of the movie, and that is the one I want in the Vintage Collection. So we got these Vintage Collection figures from the Acolyte already. So we got Sol and May and Osha, and I think they're cool figures. And, you know, I actually really enjoyed the Acolyte. I thought it was an interesting period, and it's a shame they're not exploring it more. The fan reaction was obviously just a bit too much. Anyway, we've got a couple other Jedi from this series coming soon. We've got Indara, who's due, and Yord, who's been pipelined. But I really want the villain. I want the Stranger, Khmer, and what's cooler than a bad guy wielding red lightsabers. He was really cool, and we need somebody for those Jedi to fight, so he's on my list. Alright, on my list are a whole bunch of OT, aliens, and minor characters. But the first one, not an alien, but I want the Endor Rebel Commando. That Endor Rebel Commando that was in the Vintage Collection is not really good enough. We got a whole bunch of really cool Endor stuff in 2023, and I really was hoping they were going to update the Rebel Commando. But anyway, here we are. We go up a bit into Jabba's palace. I think one of the most prominent characters in that scene and on the sail barge as well that we don't have is Fozek, so he's on my list once again. Also Shah Satil, another popular one, the Ishi Tib from Jabba's palace. Out on the skiffs, the prisoner skiff is complete now, but the other skiff is not. I've got a bunch of random characters there, but I want Yachts Orin, and been heavily influenced by my buddies from Bantha Skull, Randy and Pat the Shark, who are big Yachts Orin fans. Aliel Shus was the final HasLab tier that we couldn't quite unlock, but we saw the mock-up for it, and I think there's a groundswell of support for that character, and I would welcome it for my Cantina later this year. C-3PO, I think most people would agree that this version of C-3PO that we have in the Vintage Collection does not cut it in terms of scale, size, the pieces falling off, everything like that. We have had some super shiny C-3POs in the past. That's Power of the Force 2-1. I'm not advocating for back metal. I think the paint that they can use these days is shiny enough. But also, you know, he's actually quite weathered in a lot of those scenes. C-3PO is on my list. So some army builders, I have the Galactic Marine and the 41st Elite Clone Trooper on my list. And they're both from the same era. They're both from this 30th anniversary line, haven't been updated. And to be frank, they're just awful. This one is way underscaled. It has this like flip top helmet, which it just does not need. It has this weird loose ab crunch. They've both got swivel hips. In fact, someone was saying in the live stream the other day that their lower legs are identical. Well, the figures aren't because they're completely different scale, but that helps with the tooling. Then that's all good. Just redone the Snowtrooper, but you can't reuse the Snowtrooper parts for the Galactic Marine. And I actually replace all their blasters with more solid ones because, as Chris from Bantha Skull described it in his review, these ones are like twist ties. They're so loose, the ones that come with the actual figure. But yeah, swivel hips, can barely pose it. Just massively in need of an upgrade. And it's all new tooling as well because they aren't as identical as most standard clones. Oh yeah, and I'd buy heaps of both. Maybe not as many as Tyler. The Patrol Trooper from Solo is another fantastic Imperial design. I really like it. Unfortunately, this is 5 POA. So I would like a Vintage Collection version so I can throw this one in my garden. And I know we're not doing vehicles, but actually it would make sense if it came packed in with his Patrol Speeder. Mon Mothma. Such an important character, leader of the Rebel Alliance, and she's only ever been done in this, I think it's 1997 Power of the Force 2 Salt Shaker monstrosity. So I'd love to see a brand new Mon Mothma from Return of the Jedi. Of course, I'd also like to see a Mon Mothma from the Andor series. This scene is incomplete without sweet, sweet Simalu, one of those Imperial dignitaries, and the only figure from the original 96 that has never been reproduced in the modern line. So this one's for John. The Banis Keeg I've got on my list, it's the other Duros from the Cantina, and I had a look through the missing in action figures section on Bantha Skull, and I think this one makes sense for them to do. I think you can probably tell that I'm a little bit of a fan of clones, and one of the types of clone that's turned up in a few media and more so recently is the Clone Commando, and I'd love to get one of those. Best forehead in the galaxy, but one of the worst figures. K. Adi Mundi needs an upgrade. I'd take the Phantom Menace version though. We have a pretty cool Ezra Bridger, one that's coming with the Ghost. I don't have my Ghost yet, and we've got this one in the main line, but because we've got so many of the Season 1 characters from the Ghost, we really need a Season 1 Ezra Bridger, so he's on my list. I'd love a new EV9D9, but yeah, after the 8D8 debacle, I don't know if it would get elbows or whatever, but this one is in dire need of an upgrade. Hunter is very lonely, and I think we'd all take all of the Bad Batch at this point, but my next favourite character is Wrecker, so he's on my list representing all of the Bad Batch. I love all the Jedi, and I've just added Kelleran Beck as my 25th because I think it was cool, and it was great to have Ahmed Best back in the Star Wars saga. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for sitting through the reasons why I picked my top 25. Now this is my personal top 25. I'd love to know what your top 25 is. Remember, there's no wrong answers. This is all completely for fun. But yeah, thanks again to the SWTVC guys. If you've created a list already and submitted it, let me know in the comments section below. If you haven't and you'd like to, but you don't know how, I'll put everything in the description below so that you can go and submit your own list if you want to. But anyway, thanks again so much for watching. I'm middle-aged Kiwi man collecting Star Wars figures. That's what the t-shirt says. Ka kite, and I'll see you on another video.